So I still clearly remember the time when Carlos, my future husband at the time, and I have announced to our family and friends that we are about to go on our journey of life, around the world venture, hitchhiking. Whoa, really? Some of them got amazed. Good for you, my father unexpectedly approved. But beyond that, I believe there were many more doubts in their heads and hard to hide worries on their faces. Yet there were some who did not take this adventure seriously. And there are articles in one Lithuanian newspaper, you could find an odd comment saying, oh, they're vagabonds, uneducated time wasters, beggars. So not really serious 9-to-5 business. Well, in reality, for centuries, many explorers have been seeking for wisdom by collecting human stories, unearthing artifacts, investigating their personal experiences. Thus, after we completed our academic learning, we were finally ready to explore world education. I have studied psychology for 6 and more years, but this journey has illuminated me powerfully about how my mind and body functions and what is the human connection after all. So, I believe that anyone at some point in their lives can undertake their adventure, challenge, pilgrimage, exhibition, mission, how you call it. It can be a year long, week, a day long, cycling forwards, walking backwards, alone in silence, together in chaos, across the wilderness, inside out the cities, because the lessons are so powerful, they change you in a remarkable way and often irreversibly. So we have crossed 6 continents, completed 72,000 kilometers, that's nearly twice around the sphere, and hitched 720 drivers, cars, trucks, boats, planes, and spent 18 months on the road. How did all that change our attitude towards ourselves, life, relationships, road, and home? Let's consider home. For many, owning a place is perhaps the ultimate goal in their life. Build a house, raise a son, and plant a tree. Plant a tree, so the proverb says. On the contrary, spending at every new place for a year and a half, camping and searching for a new place has been a challenge to this universal belief. We did not have one bed to turn to each night, so our home became a space under the bridge, in the neglected barn, broken shed, market stall, in the caves, in the jungles and the mountains, in the deep snow or in the desert. You can get lost, psychologically, emotionally, not only physically, searching sometimes for a safe spot to camp, hearing laughing hyenas in Ethiopia or howling wolves in Alaska. I needed to create a safe space in my head that somehow I am at home. So the tent has been our home. Those nylon walls supposed to guard us against humans and animals and nature elements alike. Our small knife hung near the entrance each night, and our rabbit ears being stretched and ready. But interestingly, amidst all that, when the strong rain washed our delicate roof, we used to sink into our sleeping bags and sigh with relief. Hey, we're so happy. What else do we need? And so I learned that for my ultimate happiness, I did not require much. Late night, I'm absolutely exhausted after a long day's journey. My legs are finally stretched. But I am happy, deeply content. I'm free, I'm liberated. I only have one book to read. I have one pair of pants to wear. I have one diary to write, and I have a tiny shelter. And I have a world as my garden. That's it. The world has been my garden. I became liberated from the needing to own. I couldn't keep that volcano crater in Indonesia, or bright red Canadian maple leaves, or giant cerulean butterflies in Costa Rica. But I could appreciate them every single day, knowing that perhaps it is going to be the last time ever I'm going to see that stunning beauty or smell a heap of bananas. After created maybe imaginary safety in my head, I was much freer to explore world. And I repeat, this lesson is irreversible. Even if I am going to own a house at some point in my life, the feeling of not needing to possess in order to treasure the world and to develop content before building the walls has been a fundamental lesson for me. So the journey has changed my attitude not only towards about home, but also about the road itself. I always used to be a planner. Prior to the journey, I could plan to traverse a country in the minute detail. I used to have 2 or 3 golden holiday times, so every day meant to be filled with fun and pleasure, no time-wasting place. And this journey, to begin with, supposed to be exactly like that. Packed, organized. What an opportunity to see hundreds of objects. You know, not only architectural genius works, but stunning natural sights. You know, like BBC Planet Earth documentary, azure color waters, unspoiled jungles, glorious splashing waterfalls. I wanted to experience all that. Though, I often was facing quite a different reality. Messy, muggy rainforests, deserts with a hairdryer-like winds, and mud. Lots of mud. Well, this planning also was upsetting Carlos too. He did not need those famous, picturesque destinations. The road is the experience. The road that brings actual adventures, he would say. It took me many miles of unplanned sticky tarmac to understand this. But I've got to admit that the adventures, the most important encounters, happened not at the Tikal Temple in Guatemala or Sapphire Beaches in Australia. It happened when I expected the least. And so I stopped focusing on destination and started to appreciate every single driver, no matter how silent he was. And I began hearing stories and noticed that we being brought to the most welcoming houses in Sudan or Iran, and we've been brought to godforsaken, wonderful destinations in Kyrgyzstan or China or Colombia. And I opened my heart and my mind, and so adventures began. And this also leads me to ponder how I dealt with uncertainty. When we hit the road with our jam-packed backpacks on our shoulders, the unknown was nearly paralyzing. It felt like you are standing on the edge of a sea cliff and you're about to jump head down. The longer you wait, the less likely you are going to dive. So our approach was as simple as just to the next corner. We learned to say to ourselves that, okay, the known is enormous and we might not be able to stay in control of it all the time, but we can deal with it in small portions, one continent at a time. And the belief that people are going to be generally good to us has been a very important one. I remember when one guy tried to run away with our backpacks in Turkey. It's been painful because it was all about trust, breaching that trust. I got afraid that I won't be able to trust in people anymore. I remember we sat down at the edge of a road and started to talk about our further plans, knowing that this has been only the beginning of the journey. And so we said to ourselves that, well, if we want to continue our journey, we have to rebuild that faith again. Because otherwise, we might as well just turn our backs and go home. The reliance on people goodness has been a central belief in hitchhiking. So we had somehow to persuade ourselves that people are on our side, that we can somehow tap into their instinct of humanity, then we have done it. Out of 720 drivers that helped us to circumnavigate the globe, only a couple of them meant some sort of harm. We wouldn't have started or indeed finished our journey if they did not believe in us and we did not trust in them. So we learn to challenge that certainty by simply embracing it with a trust. And what else have I learned about myself and my thinking patterns and emotions? I never thought of myself as a fearful or anxious person. Calm, joyous, yes. But during this journey, I learned that I'm afraid of many things. I was afraid of Somali bandits, Venezuelan kidnappers, Mexico narco mafia, people throwing stones for no reason in Ethiopia. I was afraid of police if we stayed in the risky areas, or random fellows. I was horrified by snakes, so each time going to the bushes and listening to the leaves shuffling has been a challenge to me. I was afraid that we won't have enough water in the desert. I was horrified by imaginary starving wolf in the deep snowed-in woods. I could nearly hear that fierce beast breathing outside the walls. And I was afraid to be seen afraid. And then I realized that I'm wasting a lot of energy fighting my own imagination. That the danger is far greater in my head than in reality. So I needed to stop it. Because you need that precious mental fuel on your road. So we slowly learn to handle it. Rationalize, think fear through, Carlos would say, secretly shivering himself. And so we ask questions. What the worst can happen? What could we do in case something would happen? Maybe we can persuade the strangers, if necessary, to invent, create, survive, even in the most adverse situations, like when you're about to be deported from South Africa to Brazil, or desperately waiting for the morning sun to warm up your frozen feet in the stiff boots. When our tent got broken in the middle of the night, while the snowstorm lashed in a full rage, Carlos has managed to engineer a fix for it. And when we encountered a grizzly mom with 2 cubs in the middle of Alaskan wilderness, we somehow managed to stop ourselves from running away and acted as massive animals ourselves. And so we learned that everything is going to be okay. But if it is not going to be okay, we will be able to find our inner or outer resources to cope. You can do a bit better than you think. And ultimately, I learned to accept myself the way I am, being afraid, being angry, slow, fast, weak, strong, tired, not perfect. I am who I am at the moment. Witnessing humanity's days of work and nights of rest, I placed myself in the planet's perspective, humble as an ant, but important to those who surround me at the moment. And I'm so worthy to savor life. And lastly, what have I learned about relationships is that you need silence to be able to talk. At the start of our journey, we realized that we are very different, or very similar, hard to say, but we fight a lot. We try to prove our truths. We thought the journey is going to end without even properly starting. And Carlos said that he is going to take a vow of silence for a week. No words, just listening. He claimed it would help him better to listen. And he was right. But with him not speaking, I learned to speak less too. To listen, to hear better, to feel, to understand, to observe. to want to understand. And that proved to be the cure to our relationship. Ever since, we used to sit down and listen to each other, up to this day. Even if we allow ourselves to become stubborn in our attitudes again, we say to each other, look, I hear you. I really do, even if it doesn't seem like that at the moment. So silence, not the punitive one, but conscious with the best intentions, can be of golden value, as they say. And so, with all these valuable lessons in our shabby backpacks, we returned home. Recently, my work colleagues asked me, how on earth, after all this colorful journey, you ended up in such an ordinary place? Have you not found a more exotic dwelling to settle? And so I told them, well, the craving for ever more beautiful places can be insatiable and can wear you down. If I cannot be grateful for what I am surrounded with, then I haven't learned anything from the road. I am happy, deeply content where I am. I may get tired throughout the day, but in the presence of a simpler or more complex times, I ask myself a basic question. What is the most important right now? And sometimes it is a person in front of me, and his boundless story, and me tuning in 100%, like during the journey. And sometimes it is cycling through the fog rising from the river and blanketing the fields and the trees and the red kites and kingfishers, and me soaking it all up like on the road, learning, sharing, absorbing life, the journey of life.